Hello everybody, it's Ivan, and in this video I'm going to explain the most common Corona render settings. Let's see them. Before I start, I want to say that in most cases we can just set the resolution and render, but sometimes we need to tweak a few things. First, I will open the render settings from the teapot or by clicking F10. Then, if Corona is not already set as a current render engine, you can do it from the render drop-down menu. To make Corona render your default engine, navigate to the Assign Render and click Make Default. Now, the next thing that is not actually a Corona setting but is mandatory is the resolution. We can choose between a lot of ready-to-use presets for the aspect ratio or use a custom option and type it. Just don't forget to walk after you are ready. Thus, if you increase the width, for example, the height will change accordingly to preserve the aspect ratio. Let's move to the Scene tab. The first thing that I usually do here is to set the light mix. We need to choose the way we want the lights to be grouped. I like to group them by instances because if we have 10 ceiling lamps that are the same, it will show them as one in the light mix, and we can control all of them. While if it's set to individual lights, it will show each one separately. I just need to click Generate and it will create the light mix. When we render animations, we need to specify a render limit for the frames. Otherwise, Corona will render the first frame forever. And here the progressive render limits can help. If we set a pass limit, when Corona calculates the specified number of passes, we'll stop rendering. Time limit work similarly. When the specified time is reached, Corona will stop the render. It can be very useful especially when we have tight deadlines. Also, if we need to have an animation preview for the next morning, we can calculate the time that should be spent on each frame and set it. Thus, we will be sure that the animation is rendered in the morning. However, the noise limit is the most used parameter here. Usually people set it to something between 2 and 5. In a lot of cases this might work, especially if we are rendering high quality animation and the frame should stop rendering when we don't have any noise. But for still images my advice is not to set it at the beginning, because in some cases the quality can be sufficient in 5% noise level, while in others 2 may not be enough. That is why I usually start the render and once there is no visible noise, I stop it. Often we still have some noise in the shadows or reflections. To clean out that noise, we can enable the denoising. From the drop down, we can choose a denoising engine and the best one for final renders is the Corona High Quality Denoiser. It will be calculated once we stop the render. In this example, we can see the difference with and without the denoiser. Let's come back and see the next option, the Scene Environment tab. Here, we can use the default 3ds Max environment. Usually, when we create the sky, it will go there. Also, we can use an HDRI image in the single map or multiple HDRI map in the next slot. I have created a separate, more detailed video for these options and the link will appear in the upper corner. In some cases, we have a photo for the background and we want to use it, but to light up the scene with a sun and sky. To do it, we can load an image or an HDRI in the direct override. But as you can notice through the windows, we can still see the clear sky. We can just override the refractions as well, probably with the same image. The reflections override works in a similar way. It can be useful, for example, if we have a glass building and want to reflect a city on it. Sometimes we don't want just a sunny day but a foggy mood. To achieve that effect, we can create a volumetric material and add it. The next tab contains camera information as well as some tone mapping options. If I have to be honest, usually I use the camera settings in the actual camera, just like I would do it in the real life, and the tone mapping directly in the virtual frame buffer. It's more natural for me to make them close to the windows where I will see how they look like. Let's now check at the performance tab. Here, most of the settings work well by default, so I will show you only the things that you may have to change. If you are running out of memory, you may want to enable the conserve memory option. Just keep in mind that this will probably slow down your rendering. Another option that deserves our attention is the caustic solver. When enabled, we can create pool or glass caustics, and in Corona, they're incredible. Of course, this can affect the render time, so it's worth enabling only if we want to emphasize that effect, or we are pretty sure that the caustic will enhance our images. Usually, I use it only for pool renders with sunlight or close-up of a glass or vase. Let's see the UHD cache. If we render an animation, we definitely have to switch from still to animation. Otherwise, there is a big chance of ending up with a flickering animation, which is not very professional. Also, to save time, we can pre-compute the UHD and use it, but be careful. It is suitable only when we don't have animated lights or objects. I will skip the system tab because here you will not find something that should be changed, at least in most situations, so navigate to the render elements. You will notice that we already have some render elements. This is thanks to the light mix that we have set it. Actually, the light mix is a render element and it uses all these render elements as a source. Thanks to the automatic option that we saw earlier in the video, we don't have to add all these manually. From the add button, you can choose a render element. For example, I will add a reflection render element. Later on, I can add it in an image editor to increase or change the reflections. With the help of the render elements, we can be a lot more flexible in the post-production. Okay, these were the most used render settings in Corona. Still, in most cases, we can just click the render button, but it's a good idea to know how to add the denoiser, what to do if we are running out of memory, or what to enable if we render animation. Also, if you need to know more about some of these settings, you can go to the Corona documentation page. Okay guys, that was all for this tutorial. If you have any questions, just let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more Corona content, check out my other videos. Stay tuned for my next tutorial.